Hello and welcome to today's edition of Sirpeter Show. Today we look at the theme election, legitimacy and governance. As Nigeria has wrapped up its election, attention has been shifted to the courts, with over 700 cases filed at election petition tribunals. Aggrieved Nigerians raised their hopes on the judges and their power of judicial review to rebuke impunity, reverse error, and strengthen us toward electoral justice. In lieu of this, today's edition of Sirpeter Show, which is focused on election results, legitimacy and governance in Nigeria, is glad to host Dr. Donald Omenukor. Dr. Donald Omenukor is a senior lecturer of philosophy in Imo State University, Owerri, and Claretian University of Nigeria. A senior academician of great repute, he sits on several editorial boards of international journals, has authored 6 books. Doctor is an awesome commentator on international politics and has contributed in a variety of ways to nation building as an intellectual. Doctor, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sirpeter, for having me. Thank you.
Let's dive right in. What's your assessment of 2023 general election?
Well, in fact, as a matter of fact, I have consistently refused to comment on this election since after the elections. But before the elections, I was a very active participant. We lived on the hopes that we had based on the promises that were made to us, that this could provide an opportunity for us to, take a step forward in the right direction for once in this country, and that we saw the youth standing up to standing up to the situation and trying to write the histories. But incidentally, the status quo refused to yield the system to the youth, and they insist by their actions to want to continue to compromise the system, that we cannot be allowed to move forward in the direction the youth want it. But it's really very disappointing, but I think it is the efforts were worth the while. Thank you.
Okay, sir. The University of Gutenberg, in its report, stated that Nigeria is an electoral autocracy, perhaps due to the capture of state institutions by the ruling elites. So what do you make of such position?
That is correct. In Nigeria's politics, you see, when the man Harold Laswell defined politics as who gets what, when, and how, I think that what he meant was about the people. Who gets what amongst the people, the different groups of people that come to make up the state. Who gets what at what point in time? That is resources allocation, positions allocations, and all what kind of allocation that makes a functioning state possible. But today in Nigeria, we see a situation where that definition now have been taken up and usurped by the political elite. When they talk about who gets what, when, and how as the definition of politics, they mean amongst themselves who gets what today. So it's such a case like Mr. A, you go for the governor today, tomorrow you go to the Senate, I'll become the governor. Mr. B, why don't you go to the House of Reps? When I finish the Senate, you come to Senate, I go to this. That's what they mean, and it's so arbitrary and parochial. And I think that that statement by the Gutenberg Institute is very correct. Very correct description of what the situation is in Nigeria.
Oh, okay. We have had many electoral irregularities and frauds, but many people have described the 2020 election as criminalization, rascality, and electoral heist taken too far.
Yes.
Plus the wanton collapse of regulatory oversight. So for some, the election is unforgivably flawed. Do you share the same misgiving, or do you beg to differ?
Well, it's difficult to differ. It's very, very difficult to differ in the light of what transpired. I described it in a certain contest where I appeared, in a certain forum where I appeared, as daylight robbery. It was like somebody sitting in your house and the armed robber comes. You sit outside your house, the armed robber comes and keeps breaking your wall, while you are seeing him and sitting down there with him, probably warning him to desist from that, and he kept breaking the wall until he was able to break your wall and get into your house and cut away your goods, and you couldn't do anything. That was what it was like. It's the height of it was the height of impunity. It was the height of effrontery. on the people's mandate. We had all the processes worked out that we believed in. We had the electoral reform that was ready even before the 2019 elections, but the president, owing to the fact that he wanted to secure his second term, didn't want to sign it. When he finally signed it, we believed that, the time had come for us to move forward. Then, leading to the redesign of the Naira, every other thing that happened afterwards, we saw the party primaries and we saw what played out, and we could deduce the sentiments expressed by the president, where he wanted it to go. Finally, maybe it didn't go where he wanted it to go, and we thought that for the first time the president could live out that toga of integrity that he's been carrying from that, which was actually what gave him the recognition he has with the international community. We thought for the once that our votes may count, and we all stood out to it. You could see the youth for the first time trooping out to get their PVCs, because part of the electoral guidelines was that every eligible voter must have a PVC, and we saw what happened. It was massive. It was really celebrated all over the world that the youth have woken up here. We thought we had our own Arab Spring. People were trooping out to the street to get counted, and when the elections came, depending on the promises that we were made, we all stayed in the sun. The election, I voted in Owerri here in Imo State. The ballot things didn't come till about 12, but we waited, and everybody stood in the sun to vote, and the processes we were promised, we made sure, the voters, I personally made sure in my own polling unit that the results were counted and the votes were counted, the results documented. We were insisting that they transmit it. When they told us they couldn't activate the transmission processes, we took photographs and stuff like that, hoping that at the end of the day. But for somebody to wake up and say that a system that was test run with about 2 gubernatorial elections could not carry in this day, when we could mathematically demonstrate the capacities of these things, I think it was an effrontery too. It was robbery taken too far, really.
Okay. So, what is it that makes an election legitimate? What can be said? Well, when can it be said that a democracy is a true one?
Democracy is self-defined. Government of the people, by the people, and for the people. You see, that is really strange to us. We in this part of the world had what we call the communalistic system, which was natural to us. When we needed to gather, we knew how to make our decisions, led by the elders in our midst and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, superior arguments prevailed in a consensus agreement. But when the West saw the idea of modern democracy, it's really not the democracy that the Greeks practiced. The democracy that the Greeks practiced was more on the side of lottery than what we do today. And they gave us the democracy, and the elections is a key component of modern democratic practice. There's no democracy without elections. What they call consensus nowadays is selection. Is not actually the victory of superior argument that consensus should actually be. Is that correct? Then they go for stating the legitimacy of a democratic process begins with the quality of the elections. Are they happening when they should happen? Are there rules guiding the elections? Are those rules adhered to? I think that is what gives the result of such elections credibility. And the credibility of the results of those elections give legitimacy, a kind of moral ground for acceptance to the leaders who come. But the problem is that in Nigeria, the political class, like I have said earlier, have structured the society. What do I mean? Our society is structured in some technological environment. Technology structured the society. In our own context, the politicians structured the society. You know why I love Karl Marx? People who don't like Karl Marx, they think he's obsolete because of the collapse of communism. They think Karl Marx is obsolete. But Karl Marx, all his life, contended against what he called the despotism of capitalism. Is that correct? Yeah. Every institution we have in modern day society seems to be driven by the profit interest. Is that correct? The gain interest. The interest to make gain. Is that not correct? Politicians have worked out the system, the political system, as a business process. And they want the results, they envisage the results they want to achieve, and they work towards achieving those results. They structure the society. Look at what happened during the primaries. The parties fixed very huge amounts as the entry requirements. And you know, there are people who could be qualified. The people who were most qualified to run for those offices may not be able to afford those amount of monies to be able to enroll to contest, aspire in the primaries. This is part of the process. And once they begin that process, they try to compromise. They do everything, because left to the technology that we were practiced, if the elections had taken the route, the technological route it was supposed to take, it would have been less malleable to compromise. Is that correct? But because they knew that there was nothing they were going to do when the technologies were in place, they compromised the technology. And that's why we are where we are today. Nigerian leaders, they don't seem to gain legitimacy from the inside. If they plan to get legitimacy from the inside, they would have made the electoral process more credible. They only look to legitimacy from that small clique of theirs who support them. And that's what the government survived. Before now, they've been seeking credibility overseas. Only when you are endorsed by America, by the London Economist, for instance, by the Washington Post, for instance, or those kind of international organizations, Chatham House and all the rest of them. When you are endorsed by them, you depend on that for credibility. We have a system where the rules can be so compromised that aspirants to politician candidates to election will choose whether to face the people in a debate or not. It's such a terrible scenario, such a terrible scenario that we are in the 21st century. When we say it is a century driven by knowledge, when we say that knowledge is power, the knowledge that is power is the knowledge that is applicable. Is that not correct? Then how can you seek to run a system? How can you seek to be a leader when you cannot put yourself on the pedestal for evaluation? How do we evaluate you? We evaluate you by the kind of things you tell us. I'm here now, you're asking me questions, and I'm ready to take the questions. Why is the man who is aspiring to lead us not able to face us and confront us so that we can challenge him to the realities on ground to see how prepared he is to take it? But because they don't want your credibility, because they know that they are not going to make the process credible, they don't want your legitimacy. The hula bala since after the election has been congratulatory message.
Ooh.
Why are we so worried about getting congratulated when we know that the processes have not been very credible? We compromise the process because we are hoping that once they say the leader has been declared, the winner has been declared, and if you overturn it, there will be rioting, you control the society and stuff like that. They say for security this and that. Let's first get the congratulations from these international bodies and international countries, and we will manage what is on ground with the usual intimidation and all manner of things, online, judicial, and every other thing. So, but this time around, why I tell you that this is an extra situation is that they have not even succeeded in getting that credibility, that legitimacy they get from that side. The moral burden is still there. There is a moral burden that is inhibiting the acceptance of the results. And for that reason, because the results, the processes were flawed, were impinged upon, the result was not credible. And because the result is not credible, there can be no legitimacy from the inside. Even the legitimacy they seek from the outside is not forthcoming because those ones too are worried. Nigeria is a very strategic country in the world today. So the problem of legitimacy will remain with this particular scenario that we are in. We are waiting for the judiciary to finish what they have to do, but if it goes contrary to what a majority of discerning Nigerians think, there will be the credibility, there will be the legitimacy burden.
Okay, let's look at the election tribunal and the Supreme Court. Of course, the court just inherited the regulatory failures of the electoral body and of that of the politicians per se. So, and this responsibility of correcting the impunity of the political class. If you look at the recent court rulings, do you think that adequate faith can be reposed on the court to deliver justice? And the more fundamental question is the court actually a political institution or are they neutral?
Yeah, you see, I am not, I try always not to be a pessimist. Rather, I try to be a pragmatist. And I have always believed, I have studied civilizations all through history. And I know that no civilization has lasted forever. No matter how strongly built, no matter the principles that ground those civilizations, they have at one point in time or the other come to an end. Is that correct? I also believe that the tradition of impunity in Nigeria will one day come to an end. In fact, that was my initial motivation in urging people to go and vote. And that was my initial motivation in going to vote. The problem in Nigeria is hydra-headed. Even though I don't fall, I'm not one of those who think Nigeria is a failed state. We are thriving in a lot of other respects. In a lot of respects. Is that correct?
Yes.
But the institutional, you see, when you want to build credibility, you build institutional credibility, not individual credibility. The problem the Buhari administration had is that they rode on individual credibility. And the man could not translate that to institutional credibility in the 8 years that he has been in place. How do I say that? Buhari said he didn't know what was subsidy before coming to power. But in the last 8 years, and he said he didn't know what was subsidy, that subsidy was the means of corruption is instituted by the PDP, and that he was going to do away with it in his first year in office. But when you check through the 8 years, you've seen that there have been huge budgetary allocations for subsidy, petroleum subsidy. Who is eating that money? Where is that money going into? It's still appalling that in a country like this, we don't calculate the number of liters of fuel we produce, what we use, what we import, and these monies are being expended. But people are punished for little crimes. Let me return to your question about the judiciary. My brother, you see, when you look at the symbol of justice in courts, you will see a blindfolded virgin with a scale and a sword in one hand. A scale in one hand, a sword in one hand. Now, the blindfolded virgin is supposed to operate from what my friend John Ross will call the original position. A position devoid of any bias, prejudice, or sentiment whatsoever, mundane sentiment. And then the scale is to make sure that everybody gets his due. No two persons can be wrong on the same matter at the same time. Somebody can have some arguments, but in the final analysis you're wrong. That's why the scale is there, to measure, to make sure that it is one way or the other. And the sword there is to execute the consequences of whatever judgment that comes out. It is the greatest disaster when somebody bestowed with the so revered honor of dispensing justice allows himself to be contemplated as to whether he is fit, whether he has integrity or not. The Nigerian judiciary system has not done themselves any good in the history of this country by the kind of judgments and the kind of activities they have released. And on the grounds of those decisions and judgments they gave, which were completely, some not just contrary to common sense, but against natural justice that we have seen. They rely on technicalities to mess up issues that is within the purview of the public to adjudicate. Something that a layman can decide on, and it will be so thorough. You that is so revered, with, endowed with such enormous responsibility of dispensing justice, could just want it. That is the dilemma of our system. But I'm not saying everybody gets opportunity every time to make amends and to return to the principles. As long as there are the rules there, no matter how you stray from them, you have opportunity every time to return to them. I will not be pessimistic with what is expected of the judiciary, but I will think that they have another opportunity to start to continue on the right path, to start on the right path and continue on the right path. That's not ruling out of the fact that the mundane considerations that have happened in the past will also rear their heads, and we will return to square one.
It sounds quite sad, but this emerging argument that the electoral system is in need of further reforms, especially with regard to the fact that all judicial processes and post-election matters should be concluded before a president or a governor or any elected official should be sworn in. So what do you make of such arguments? Is that like
we have the right to continue to proffer the arguments. There is always the necessity. No system is intact. There is need for continuous review of processes. Part of what is required in this age is that we continue to learn, and we have the ability to unlearn, and we have the ability again to still relearn. Is that not correct?
That's correct.
And that is even what necessitates the electoral reforms we talk about. From the existing, after every exercise, you need to evaluate that exercise. and on the result of your evaluation, you decide on the way forward. Is that not correct? Then that is the need for reforms. We can continue to do the reforms. We can continue to do the reform, but reforms require, for reforms to be effective, they require paradigm shifts. Sometimes incremental reform of policies have not yielded the results we have expected, because when there is an idea that has been proffered and the person who is to deliver that idea, execute that idea, is still of the old order, is still of the compromised order, is still of the old order, the status quo, you can expect that along the line you may not even get the result of the new reforms that you are making. What we are asking is that there should be an institutional, the reform should be institutional. The reform should be institutional. For instance, INEC had no right to issue a guidelines based on a law that is anchored on the Constitution, because the Electoral Act is part of the Constitution of this country. And when you issue the regulations, you issue regulations pursuant to articles of the law. Is that not correct? They have no right to come at a point in time to decide to deviate from the law. They have no right to come at any point in time and deviate from the law. So what I'm saying is that we can continue to proffer solutions to reforms, we proffer ideas to reforms. I think the problem, a major problem in Nigeria, is implementation of those processes. We don't lack the ideas. We have enough. We have situations where we generate ideas. We have, what are the universities doing? What are the academics doing? What are the institutes doing? We should learn from experience in addition. But implementing the laws require a kind of institutional, broad-based institutional reform that makes people accountable for processes that they are entrusted with. If we don't make people accountable for processes they are entrusted with, we'll end up generating the ideas and the implementation will continue to be zero.
Which is terribly sad. But let's reflect on the reality of a Tinubu presidency, because by May 29 now he'll be inaugurated.
Somebody will be inaugurated.
Yes. So what do you make of his capabilities to govern Nigeria, and how legitimate will such a government that emerged from a flawed process be?
My brother Sirpeter, your guess is as good as mine. We say in research that it is from the known you move to the unknown. Is that not correct? This Tinubu, the Tinubu man has not given us enough opportunity to be able to assess. You see, when I write references for people, they request that you attest to the person's capacity to be able to do certain things, and we have not had the opportunity of assessing those. Each of the opportunities or semi-opportunities we have had, the results weren't quite encouraging. I was just telling my students in the class that I taught them leadership skills. That's the class I taught. I just finished teaching now, and I was telling them that there is no way you can seek to govern a place without conducting a SWOT analysis of that place. Is that correct?
It's true.
You cannot be a leader. Part of what makes you a leader is your ability to break down a problem situation to be able to find solutions. Is that not correct? That's what makes you a leader. And the debates that would have happened in Nigeria, the interviews that would have happened with the presidential candidates, would have opened doors up to each and every of the candidates' strategies, their understanding of the problem on the ground in the first instance, and then the strategies they have in place to begin to tackle them when they come into power. We didn't get all those things. And I don't want to join the street arguments. I don't want to reduce myself completely to the street arguments where they say this man is sick, he's old, he's sick. I don't think by the age he claims he's older than Trump. But when no matter Trump, like him, hate him, when he was running for the American presidency, he said, America first, America second, America third. One way Trump showed that was when he withdrew America from the Kyoto Protocol that prescribed the world pulling out of fossil fuel at a particular point in time to give way to alternative energy because of climate change. Trump came into power and pulled America out of the Kyoto Protocol and said, if we withdraw American technology from fossil fuel, by this time you people are stipulating for us, the American economy will not survive it. We have to move at our own pace in pulling American technology out of fossil fuel energy and returning it and moving it to alternative energy. That is one way of thinking about your country. That's one way of thinking about America first, America second, America third. He wasn't thinking about what calamity awaits the world with climate change, with the erosion of the ozone layer, with what we are going to pull out. Quite all right, we are going to pull out, but we'll pull out at our pace, at the pace the American economy can be able to take this pull out. That is one way of showing your strategy of, thinking about your country. We've not gotten any of these things from the president. Declare the president-elect. All we need to do now is to return to the age of speculation. We are now in the age of speculation. When we have left that in the Middle Ages, we have left the age of speculation in the Middle Ages. What could be the responsible for this? What could be the age we are living in is the age of classical mechanics. Every event has a cause. Every cause must lead to an event. If you want a better Nigeria, a better Nigerian economy, you have to show us there is a scientific route to that economy. If you want a technological advanced Nigeria, there is a scientific route to that. There are mathematical equations guiding those processes. We need to begin to see them. And if the president-elect, Tinubu, was not able to give us some of these things, indications really of some of these things during the campaigns, what are we to base our gaze on? Nobody can make any informed gaze. Informed gazes are made on the basis of evidence that is available. If there's no evidence available, you can't make an informed gaze. You just speculate. You just do ordinary gaze, and your gaze is as good as mine.
Okay, I would like you to give a parting words to the youth who feel despaired by the outcome of the election.
Yeah, that is very important. This morning or last night, I was reading about what is happening in Uganda. I was reading about the role the youths have been playing in the last, since about 2001, when they began to resist the al-Bashir government, and they formed themselves into cells, community groups, and they were even when al-Bashir was forcefully removed by those activities of the youths, and then the military took over the government again and began to hunt those youth leaders that were leading those operations. They went underground, and the article I was reading was telling me how they went to study non-violent revolutions as it is practiced elsewhere, and they are bringing it to bear that even in the crisis that is happening in Sudan now, I'm talking about Sudan, not Uganda. I hope I didn't mention Uganda. Sudan, even with the crisis that is happening there now, those community groups are still very active, providing information about where there is medicine, safety routes, and stuff, and making sure that even after the war that is happening there now, the systems they have put in place continues to run to make sure that everybody that comes to power is held accountable. Look, if we abandon the project at this stage, we'll relapse to several years back. We must continue on a track to show the political elite that we have that level of consciousness that we can no longer be cajoled. We are not going to get violently confrontational, but we are going to continue to confront them wherever we find them with superior ideas. The youth will continue to rise. I tell my students, you must impose yourself on every situation you find yourself, not physically, but with superior knowledge and superior argument. And I think that if we continue to do that, we will compel even the worst of the devils to rethink his own life. So we cannot stop the operations here. Let the courts do their will. If the courts do their will and it prevails the way it is, let's assume Tinubu is cleared to lead Nigeria for the next 4 years. The youths can still not keep quiet in that 4 years. We have to keep Tinubu on his feet. We have to keep Tinubu on his feet. And if we do all we can to keep him on his feet, the person coming after him, whether it's 4 years or 10 years, will know that it will not be business as usual. So we have to keep up the fight.
Wonderful. Mr. I want to thank you exceedingly for taking your time to talk to us.
Thank you very much.
And I know that our fans will appreciate it very well.
Thank you very much.
Please say hi to them.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, the audience. Thank you. We have to continue to work, and victory is surely assured. Yeah. Thank you very much.
This after show again, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Yeah, add your questions in the comment section so that we can invite them next time to clarify them.
Thank you.
Giving everyday heroes extraordinary